The Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered,
You do not know what I am doing, but later you will understand.
"You will never wash my feet."
Unless I wash you, you have no share with me.
"Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head."
One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you.
For he knew who was to betray him. And for this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them,
Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And as I said to the Judeans, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.
The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. Tonight's Gospel reading is about legacy. In tonight's reading, we heard that Jesus knew that his death was imminent. He knew that he had been given only days before he would be killed. And so that night, gathered with the disciples, Jesus made very clear how he wanted to be remembered. Now, it's not uncommon for individuals who are getting close to death, and also for the loved ones of those individuals, to spend some time thinking about their legacy in those last moments of their life. In our world, human legacy is often communicated through photographs or through memorial gifts or written stories like an obituary. Well-known or wealthy individuals, they oftentimes will commission things like statues to live beyond their breath, or they will put their names on building projects or rooms, or they will memorialize something like a bench or a tree with a plaque with their name. These are ways that people strive to have their legacy live on, far beyond their bodily presence. Yet if you notice in tonight's reading, Jesus emphasized a different type of legacy than we normally see. As we read, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. You see, Jesus chose for his legacy to be love. It was love that got up in tonight's gospel reading and took up a towel and washed the disciples' feet. And then back in the beginning of John's gospel, it was love that turned water into wine. It was love that then offered a Samaritan woman living water. It was love that healed on the Sabbath. It was love that fed the 5,000. It was love that cured a man born blind. And it was love that ultimately raised Lazarus from death. You see, the legacy that Jesus chose to leave was not one built out of stone or gold. His legacy was not found in multi-million-dollar endowment gifts, and it was not revealed in the passing along of generational wealth. No. You see, Jesus, on that final night before he was betrayed, Jesus chose to lead a legacy of love. And it's fitting that on that night, as he was sharing his final words with his disciples, that he gathered them around a table. His final supper he chose to have with those whom he loved, those who had been with him for so long, and for those who often misunderstood exactly what Jesus was trying to do. Those who would ultimately betray him in the hours ahead, those who would say they never knew him, those who would literally sell him out. It was those people that Jesus chose to pass along his legacy of love. It was those around the table that he began recalling stories and situations. It was over a meal that he began to share the best practices for navigating through the difficult situations of life. And he also gave them a playbook on how to best foster peace. It was at a table where he would use words to finally explain all of the actions that he had done throughout his ministry. These words were all meant to communicate a legacy of love. And so, siblings, on this night, we gather not only to speak words, but also to embody actions. Whether through the actions of laying on of the hands, or the actions of washing another's feet and having our own feet washed, actions of gathering around a holy meal with bread and wine, actions of lovingly taking a space adorned with symbols of our faith and putting them aside, stripping away all that is. Tonight, as we begin this 3-day journey, we are given a question of legacy. It's about knowing Jesus through his loving legacy, and then it's that invitation to ask ourselves the same legacy question tonight. That is, how do you individually, how do we as a community, how do we as a society, as humankind, how do we want to be known? What is our legacy? And tonight's experience then asks us and encourages us to follow Christ's example, to allow being right to be secondary to being in relationship, to permit social norms to yield to grace and understanding, friends, to ultimately, in the end, allow love to be our legacy. Amen.